tired of democracy. Don't get tired of democracy. Democracy is allows us as citizens to express ourselves freely, to choose our leaders freely, to choose those who can determine our fate, to choose those who can transform our lives, even to live, to have a peaceful life as citizens, to coexist peacefully, can only happen within a democratic space. That's why it's a duty of every Gambian, it's a solemn duty of every Gambian to do their utmost to uphold, safeguard, and consolidate our democracy, regardless of who is president. Democracy is not about who is president. Democracy is a system. We must build a system, not build a democracy around individuals. So that we have a system that transcends our leaders. Leaders will come and go, but if the system is good, whoever is in power will have no option but to deliver. And if that person doesn't deliver, we will are in a position to remove them through the ballot box. So I really encourage Gambians to participate in the democratic process, to express themselves, and to do so in peace. My name is Salieu Taal, a Gambian. I am a legal practitioner and currently the president of the Gambia Bar Association. I was opportune to be one of the initiators and founders of the movement Gambia Has Decided. I am passionate about democracy and good governance and do my best to participate and partake in the building and consolidation of our democracy. Bull Ties Democracy, I think, is a very apt caption and title. For 22 years, we lived under a dictatorship that pretended to be a democracy, and the people were tired, and they gave up. And when we gave up, tyranny and dictatorship reigned for 22 years. Come December 2016, as Gambians, we decided once and for all that we want to restore our dignity, we want to restore our democracy, and we use our voters' cards and gave a red card to dictatorship and ushered in a democracy. And democracy is a process, and one process is electing a leader, but it's a process that continues. And for that purpose, the citizenry must never be tired. They must always be informed. They must always be active. They must participate. And every citizen must participate. Every demography. I mean, it should be inclusive. That means young people, women, men, and people who are called disabled or hard of hearing, amongst other things. It is important that all views are heard, because democracy is about the convergence of different ideas. Ideas sometimes, I mean, are not popular or minority ideas, but it's important that every voice counts, even though the majority voice prevails, but that doesn't mean that you silence the voice of the minority. So it's very, very important. Of course, we all have to talk about religion, Christians and Muslims alike. We are 95% Muslim, but also the voice of Christians, or even those who are not into religion, matter. For me, that is very important, and that's why it's important to build a democratic culture. And you cannot be tired, because this is a long time, it's a marathon, and you have to instill the culture, and it's like a tree that you grow and nurture and build for generations of Gambians to enjoy. A marker for true democracy is how well it allows for the voice of the marginalized to be heard, and also to allow for their representation. So I think in this context, it is very important as we forge ahead to build a new Gambia to really take special attention, put in special measures to ensure that groups that are quote-unquote marginalized or seen as marginalized or less important, which is really not the case, to be at the table. For example, disabled people should be able to have a seat in Parliament. I mean, women constitute more than half the population. So, I mean, our legislature, our Parliament should reflect, I mean, more women, and also young people who are the majority of the population should be, should be represented even in Parliament. I mean, of course, they are 65% of the population. I'm not saying that they should be 65% of the parliamentarian, but at least they should be adequately represented, because, I mean, there's no better person to speak for you than yourself. So the youths, the women, and the marginalized are in a better position to articulate, promote, and speak to the issues that affect them. But I think, I mean, that is not the case, and I think if we're building an inclusive and participatory democracy, it is very important that at the foundation stage, we make sure that we ensure the participation and representation of marginalized groups. Well, elections are important because election is like a scorecard. I mean, you elect a leader, and every 5 years you have an opportunity to decide whether to continue with the leader or to change the leadership based on whether or not they've delivered on their promises or the expectations of the population. And I mean, this is basically one of the process whereby the citizens can actually hold their leaders accountable. So as a leader, you need to make sure that you are delivering on your campaign promises, and also on ensuring that you uplifting the lives of the population, putting policies that will help the population. And after 5 years, the citizens have a right to sort of decide your fate. We've given you 5 years. What have you done for us in 5 years? What did you say you're going to do for us before you came? What have you done for us? How have you fared? Should we give you a chance or not? Or should we give another person a chance? I think that is where it shows the power of the citizen to decide the fate of the country. In whose hands do we leave our destiny? So it's a very, very important civic right and responsibility for citizens to exercise that right once every 5 years. Of course, accountability is not only during elections, but election is at one time when citizens can actually decide to give you a green card or a red card. Elections have actually made a difference in Gambia. We decided, people always ask me, what have you decided? I said, we decided that Jammeh should respect our voices. We spoke, voted against him, and that's what we're asking for. And we have that today, for sure. We have a new government that we elected. And if we're not happy with this government, we can also go to the polls and elect somebody else. Isn't that what we wanted? We had a leader for 22 years that violated our rights. I mean, and there was nothing we could do about it until we decided to kick them out through the ballot box peacefully. And now Gambians know that any leader that doesn't deliver can be taken out with a voter's card. It doesn't have to be violent. That is democracy, and I think that is the biggest achievement of 2016, which nobody can play down. Gambians peacefully change their government, change a military government in Africa, a military government with all its might and resources, will change by ordinary people with their voters' card. That is major, and we must never forget that. We must never take it for granted. We lived in the Gambia, and in those days, every day you wake up and go to work, you're not guaranteed coming back home. But we were living in fear of our lives, our liberty. I mean, this was the problem of every Gambian, regardless of who you are, from the gardener to the managing director to the lawyer to the taxi driver. Nobody was spared. So I think we were able to change that system where a leader basically ran the country as a kingdom and did whatever he liked. I mean, we didn't have our justice system wasn't independent. People couldn't go to court and challenge what the government is doing. People have had difficulty enforcing their constitutional rights, and all those things are now a thing of the past. As in the current environment, people are speaking. This interview is testimony to fact. I would not have done this interview in 2016, but now, I mean, look at the proliferation of media outlets. I mean, if you turn on the radio, people are, speaking their minds, having divergent views, and so on and so forth. We have so many private TV stations. So freedom of expression, which is it's a critical pillar in a democracy, now we in that area we're doing very well. I mean, it's not perfect, but I don't think any Gambian can now in this day and age say that they cannot speak their mind. Before, people are arrested for speaking their mind. People are arrested for broadcasting, Skype broadcasting a political rally and taken to court and locked up. This happened in this country. I mean, now it is much better because the civic space is wider, and even if the government tries to, violate our rights, we know we can go to a court and challenge the legality of government's actions. I think that is major. Of course, we have changed. There are a lot of things that have also remained the same. But I think fundamentally, the civic space is wider, and the citizens are more enlightened, and citizens know that they have the power to hold the government accountable. During the previous regime, we never had the power. Whether you were a lawyer, whether you were a doctor, whether you were an Gambian, it didn't matter. Even whether you were a judge, it didn't matter. Now I think we have shifted from that system. Now we are living in a democratic space. Our disputes, our differences are resolved within the democratic space. It's not being resolved with the use of force. In the past, force was the tool that was used to oppress the people. Today, it's different in many ways. I mean, democracy is about representation and participation. Without meaningful participation in the democratic process, the democracy will not have the legitimacy it deserves. For example, if you have an election and less than 40% vote, it means 40% of the population have been registered, and 40% have chosen the leader. So obviously that means 60% are not part of the process. That's why it is very important to encourage citizens to participate in the democratic process. The more people participate, the more legitimacy and ownership people have of the process. So it is very, very critical. That's why but this is not even unique to Gambia. I mean, voter apathy is common in many, even in Western countries. But I mean, we as Gambians, we've seen how participating in democracy has actually helped change our destiny. I mean, for example, the first time I ever voted was in 2016. Before, I never really bothered to vote. I was not in the country. But 2016, I said I wanna make a difference by putting this one card to make sure it goes where it should go. In this case, was the coalition, President Adam Barrow, because I thought that was the way we could change our fate. And many other Gambians did the same. That's why we have a new president and have a new system. So this year, unfortunately, I believe we have over close to 1 million registered voters, and I think also many of them are young people. So now we have to go further. It's not only about having the card, but using the card. So we expect that not only do we register the young people, the women and others, we also make sure that they go out there and exercise the right to vote. I mean, obviously, I cannot tell them who to vote for, but they should vote for whoever they believe best represents the interests of the country. And I think this is very critical. So participation is key, and the more the merrier. I mean, the more people vote, and in some countries they make it compulsory to vote. I'm not saying we should, but that shows you how serious it is. This is actually very interesting. I remember when we were working on the draft constitution. We were going around the country. I was part of the team that went with Activista under the team Constitution We Want, and we were going around to different communities. I think we were in Fonyi Jarol. I remember we had a discussion with the population, and we were discussing about what do you expect of a leader. And I remember an old man, if I recall, did say that when you're choosing an imam in a community, you really want somebody who's probably one of the most learned in the Quran to be your imam. And also not only most learned, but has all the virtues of an imam, being honest, have integrity, fair-minded, and so on and so forth. So I think also, presidency is a job. It's like if you're applying for a job, you want the best candidate to basically to be hired, to be employed, because we the citizens are employing the president. The president is working for us. We are the employers, and he is the employee. He or she is the employee. So the criteria should be very clear. So a president, in my opinion, whoever should run the country, should be capable, knowledgeable, and have very high, strong moral values. And I think, I think this is probably the most important thing, because of course a lot of people focus on someone having high level of education, but you can be, which is great. I think you need that because it assumes you have capacity. But you can be the most educated person, but not the most ethical person. So you need a combination of being knowledgeable educated. Even if you're not educated, you should be knowledgeable enough to deliver. But most importantly, you must have sound ethical values and be sincere. And this is where you talk about honesty. Honest to the people, sincere to the people. And I think and be selfless. Because when you're serving the country, you put the country first. It's not about the perks of the office. It's not about what you can do for your friends. It's about what you can give to the country, not what the country gives to you. Obviously, the office comes with a lot of perks, which is fair enough. But you're enjoying those perks because you're there to serve the people. We are paying taxes so that you can have a motorcade of I don't know how many cars, live in a big house, put in your AC all you want, and you don't pay a dime out of your pocket. But we are paying for it. So the least we expect is for you to deliver in the interest of the country. So it's very, very important that that person who is vying for office, when you go out there to the public, should tell us the issues that matter, the issues that they think, the issues and the policies that they have in place to transform the life of the Gambians. For me, I like to make it very simple. It's about how do you change the life of the average Gambian. That mother who's in a village where the nearest hospital or clinic is 2-3 kilometers away. That mother who has difficulty fetching potable water. That mother whose child might be the most brilliant Gambian but doesn't have access to a good school. For me, that Gambian boy who feels that he has to go back way to succeed in life and might lose his life, and he knows that he's taking the risk, but he'd rather go back way than stay in the Gambia. Why? So I think, what are the policies in place? The healthcare system. What are the policies in place to make sure that our healthcare system is up to standard? In the past, people used to come here for healthcare system, but here people who have means will go away. Those who don't have means, it's like a lottery. So why should healthcare not be available to everybody at a basic minimum standard? So these are the issues that Gambians should, our leaders or people who vying for office should talk to us about and tell us what are the concrete actions and steps they will take if elected. And we as citizens, we must interrogate. Everybody can have their own manifesto, that's their right. But we as citizens, we must tell you, out of all this manifesto, these are the 5 things that matter to us as Gambians. I mean, this farmer who's been toiling for years and cannot make a living, it's easier sometimes to even come and be a white man in the Combos than to be a farmer in the provinces. You be a taxi driver in Bruce, it might be easier than farming groundnut in Fas. These are real issues. Why? In other countries, farmers are the richest people. You have the land, but there's so many things that are missing. So how would any leader change that narrative? And these are issues that we want to discuss to decide who we will entrust with our country. I think it's very important for all citizens to appreciate, understand that it is their solemn duty to participate not only in electing the president, but perhaps as important or more important, in electing our National Assembly members and our councillors. Because governance is a multi-tiered process, and each of these institutions, the local authorities, parliament, and the executive, have a role to play. And I think increasingly we should look and advocate for more local government, more power to the local authority, so that today I live in Burfoot. Birkama Area Council are responsible for Burfoot. I should be able to make sure that Birkama Area Council is well run, is effective, and delivers the services that all residents of the Area Council deserve. For that purpose, I have a stake in ensuring that, or anybody who lives in the area, you have, competent councillors who care about the community, who care about the environment, competent chairperson. So that's at the local level. Also, to make sure that the parliamentarians who represent Burfoot, for example, this is what is mentioning, care about the community, represent the interests of the community, because there's some things that are closer to home. We have issues of sand mining, we have fish meal factories. As residents of this area, we expect that our voice will be represented by the person elected from this area. Same way, if you're from Gunjur, you expect the Gunjur parliamentarian to represent you. If you're from Banjul, North, there's an issue. Likewise. So that's why it's important you choose the right person who can represent the interests of your community and also the overall national interests. Because in everything we do, the national interest is supreme. It's not only about your area. It has to fit in within the national plan because we're a country first. We are citizens of Gambia first. And we're only citizens of Gambia and residents of a constituency. So at all times, we must also look at the national picture. Think in terms of national interest. I mean, I think anecdotally, I don't think Gambians really understand how the three organs of state, the legislature, the executive and the judiciary, how together they work and are they interdependent. I don't think many Gambians understand that because you have to understand we lived in a system where it was really one person who controlled all these three arms of the state. So a lot of Gambians grew up believing that the president is a king. He can dictate to the judiciary, he can dictate to the police, he can dictate to anybody based on directives. That was the word, directives. You never used to hear about constitution or law. Those words were very alien. It was about, even up to today, when the government people, many of them write, you hear, I am directed to. Because that is the mindset. Now, it will take a while to undo that mindset, to unlearn those ways. And that's why I always say that in a democracy, it's very important to instill a democratic culture. Because if you don't have a democratic culture, you will have institutions. But people man institutions, and how people behave in those institutions determine how effective those institutions are. If you have a case and you have a judge who's adjudicating, and that judge doesn't have a progressive mindset or orientation, he or she might take decisions which might contract rights. You might have another judge who probably is more minded in terms of expanding rights and responsibilities of the citizen in line with the Constitution. And that judge would be more likely to err on the side of expanding the rights of the individual as opposed to contracting them. So this is about democratic culture. Now, for example, the same laws that we had before we still have the same laws. But look at what the judiciary is doing. They're really, a lot of great judgments are coming out of the judiciary. And it's the same laws, but different sets of judges. So you can see the difference. You go to, for example, I've seen sometimes, our National Assembly members, I think they should do better in holding the executive accountable. I see them sometimes passing bills without enough scrutiny or better scrutiny with all due respect. I see, for example, you have all the supplementary appropriation bills, which I believe sometimes, probably offend their own rules, and they will go ahead and pass these bills because, I don't know why. So, but it's the role of the parliament to check the executive. And of course, the judiciary adjudicates disputes between the different arms of government or citizens alike. But I think, and for example, when civil society would questions parliament or question, they would sometimes be offended and think, who are you to question us? But at the end of the day, they are serving us, the people, and we elected them to act on our behalf. So if they fall short in our views, rightly or wrongly, we have a right in a democracy to raise it. I'm not saying we're right all the time, but it's our right to challenge them. And I don't think they understand that. So in Gambia, they believe that, you should be allies. Yeah, we can be allies on things we agree on, but if we don't agree on the same thing, we can challenge you within, of course, and it's our legitimate right to do so. And people will take it personal. I would write something as bar president if, for example, the president, in my opinion, does or says something which is not in line with the Constitution, and then I'll get calls to tell me, why are you against the president? I said, no, I'm not against the president, but I believe that what he said is not in line with the Constitution, and the president or anybody else and my humble self are guided by the Constitution. But people, it's like, is this Mansaya, you are challenging a president. It's not the president. The president is a human being elected to serve for a particular period of time, and then he will or she will leave, somebody else will be there. but the Constitution is supreme. And we need to understand that. And we live in a democracy, not in a monarchy. And so even the parliamentarians, they are guided by the Constitution. They are guided by their standing orders. They can only act within the powers. In as much as they legislate on our behalf. And in their actions, they cannot act outside the scope of the law. Even I, as a citizen, I cannot. I cannot start driving on the other side of the road. I can't. So this is something that people need to understand. We are a nation of laws. You must follow the law. That's what is called the rule of law. And it's very important in democracy. That's why in the Western country, even the president of America doesn't dare break the law. Even the governor of New York had to step down. But here, we still don't understand that. We think that sometimes you can have a discretion not to follow the law, but that's not what happens in a true democracy. That's not what happens in a country that is governed by the rule of law. I wouldn't want to paint the entire parliament with the same brush. I think, to be fair, there's a spectrum of different parliament. There are people with great capacity in the parliament, and there are people who don't have so much capacity, and there are people who are learning. So I think, I would not say that the parliamentarians are incompetent. I think, and some of them, it's not about incompetence. Some of them, they know, they have the academic background, they have the experience, but sometimes they make politically motivated choices because of partisan interest rather than national interest. And that has nothing to do with whether you're educated or competent or not. I think in Gambia, I always say our problem is not so much so, well, competence is part of our problem, but our bigger problem is about ethics, attitude, and values. And this is something you don't learn in a school or university. Values is how you're brought up and what drives you as a human being. So I think historically our political system was designed, this is not today, this is from Jawara's time, was designed to keep educated people out of politics. Educated people became permanent secretaries. The brightest were permanent secretaries, directors, and so on and so forth. And the not so educated people during Jawara, the ministers were hardly graduates in Jawara, hardly, you count them in those days. Their ministers and parliamentary secretaries were people who didn't have a higher level of education, because in those days you have to go and find a constituency and get voted in and so on and so forth. So if you imagine, if you were educated, you went to university abroad, came back, you started your career. Now you go and you have to resign and then go and run for a seat in Kiang or Banjul North. I mean, what happens if you lose the election? I mean, your career. So it made it very difficult for educated people or technocrats to participate in politics, and because you also have to have a base. So for many years, the caliber of politicians were usually not people who were university graduates, even if they're from Jawara's time. Now, fast forward, Jammeh basically made it even harder, because we had a ruling party that was pretty much, Jammeh, everybody knows how Jammeh was running this country. So, it's very difficult to be principled and align yourself with Jammeh, in my opinion. So we need to know the kind of politics that was being played in Gambia. We saw the TRRC, and we saw a lot of things that has happened. And so many, capable Gambians kept to themselves. They didn't want to be part of it. In fact, many Gambians left the country and went on exile. Some of the brightest and smartest left the country. Now, 2016, I think it's starting to change. I think, of course, the people who are in power were those who are typically involved in the struggle, because obviously in politics there's a lot of patronage. So people who fought would be rewarded. That's what happens in politics. So, but now we're seeing a renaissance. We have the likes of CA coming up. Recently we have ESA by far, and we also have other political parties with people who are fairly educated. And even within the political party, existing traditional political parties, we're seeing a lot of professionals coming in their ranks and getting engaged in politics. We've seen Mayor Talib Bensouda, a young, educated, professional businessman with a track record, running for the office of mayor. That was unheard of before. So I think that is changing, and I think it will take time. I think I mean, it will take time. This 2021 is one step forward, but 2026, I think you'll see more of educated, professional Gambians who will get into politics, whether it's municipal politics or national politics. And I think it's because the way politics is played now makes it very hard, for educated, structured people to partake in politics. Because politics here is the party structures, the national base, the eye companies, sometimes the bench in politics, and not. I mean, it's hard work. You have to get your hand dirty. You might be the smartest guy on the block, but that doesn't make you the best politician. Because politician, you have to be relatable. You might be the best economist, the best lawyer, the best doctor, the best agroeconomist, but politics is about connecting with people. So even with those skills, you need to connect with people, and sometimes people here connect in different ways. I think in Gambia, people tend to connect through ethno-linguistic connection, and of course, and that's natural. But that should not be. And we have to transition from that. You should be able to connect with people because you're selling them ideas that they can buy, the thing you can deliver, regardless of where you're from. But it will take time for us to get to that level. But I think we are getting there. And the more people, the more diversity you have in the political space, the more likely that people will be emboldened to say, well, if Dr. Caesar can do it, SR can do it, that one can do it, I can also do it. End of the day, the jury is out. So we will see how it works out, and then we also move on. But politics is not only the presidency. I always encourage young people. I say, why can't you go and vie for council? Because I think you need to hone your skills at the lower level first. Get experience at the council level. You can make a difference. Try to be a mayor or a chairperson, council, member of parliament, and then the national. I think we also don't need to just jump. Everyone wants to jump and be president. There are different ways. We need more educated people to go to the National Assembly. Why not? And I think there's a space, but you need to be very bold. You need to be selfless, and it comes with sacrifice, because there's no guarantee that you'll win. There's no guarantee. But if you believe in yourself and you have what it takes, and you have a program to sell, why not? There are issues that you vote on party lines, and the issues that should be bipartisan. It's everywhere in the world, right? And I think, Parliament is a political space. It's where the heart of politics is played in Parliament. Partisan politics, I understand that. That's very clear. But I think when it comes to matters of common interest, national interest, I think we expect that the kind of politics, those are issues that should transcend partisan politics. I cannot imagine in 2020 now, we are even talking about not having a constitution. All those people who are in parliament were elected with the understanding and belief that we are changing a system. Well, at least that's what they sold to all of us. So we don't expect any one of them to partake in anything that does otherwise. Of course, I respect their right to see things differently. I understand that. But I think in the grand scheme of things, when something as important as changing a constitution, I was really disappointed that I think 22 or 23 parliamentarians voted against it for reasons best known to them. And I'm not questioning that they don't have the right. It's a democracy. But I heard on the floor that day, a parliamentarian saying that this constitution is reducing the powers of the president. That tells you something. Where on earth would a parliamentarian stand on the floor and say that, you are reducing the president's power? Is that a business of parliamentarian? Parliament is supreme. Parliament is one of the strongest institutions anywhere in a democracy. Parliament should have power to hold anybody accountable. So for a parliamentarian to now start thinking that, you're really trying to chip the president's shoulder, come on. That shows you that there's a lot of education that needs to happen. Because it's like you are limiting your own power as parliament. That's what you're doing. Parliament, we're always trying to stop them from increasing their power. But you as a parliamentarian is saying that you don't want too much power. But you have to have enough power to hold government accountable. So for me, it means that we need a lot of orientation and probably a bit of soul searching and probably to think of the kind of people we elect. Because when we were electing this parliamentarian, it was during the honeymoon period. Everybody was happy that Jammeh left, and we were all one happy family, and we were not that polarized as a country. So I mean, everybody was voting Jammeh out. So that's what happened. We never did a proper assessment of who we were voting for, by and large. But now, as a people, we've seen who's in parliament and what they stand for, and what they're voting on issues. Because now people are aware. People watch parliamentary proceedings, especially on matters that people are really interested in. So I think it's very important that going forward, we encourage people of capacity and of the right moral values and understanding to go to parliament. Because if you're in parliament, you need to understand the issues. You have to understand the issues. You need to understand also your role as a parliamentarian. It's very, very important. I don't know whether they do sort of an orientation or not, but sometimes you wonder whether some of them understand their role. But I'm just speaking, I mean, of course, as a whole, I think they've done much better than before, because, for example, in terms of, for the first time, well, as far as I know, in terms of the committees, they invite civil society, they invite the bar, they invite stakeholders on all the major pieces of legislation that they believe that stakeholders should participate, especially within the democratic space. So in that sense, there's a lot of collaboration in terms of co-creating legislation, which is really commendable, because there's no major legislation that affects the rule of law or governance that they don't invite the bar association, for sure, and we go and meet the committee. We even go on retreats with them to give them our legal perspective. So I think those things are good. Now there's more inclusiveness, but still we can do better. And I think, but as I say, I will say it's work in progress, and sometimes we also have to manage our expectations. I mean, we've been sleeping for like 22 years, and now we want to sprint, But the reality is, without the capacity, we cannot go as far as we can go. So we have to also manage all those processes, so that at least we can sustainably build our democracy. I believe that information is power. You cannot have a sustainable democracy without having an informed citizenry. I think this is critical, and I think this is where we need to do a lot of work. We have democratic institutions in place. We have some laws. Some of the laws are democratic, and some of them are not. But by and large, I think there's a democratic dispensation in this country. But the people still don't understand or have enough information to make informed choices or to hold their leaders accountable. This is where, for example, an access to information law is important, and so that people know that now they can write to a government department and ask them, I want to know, give me information or documents about a particular contract. I need to know whether the contract was done properly. Also, you can write to the Minister of Health and ask them, we need to know how much money came into COVID, where it went, and so on and so forth, etc., etc. You can ask who has a contract to do a particular job and why. I mean, this information you have, if government is transparent, then there'll be more accountability. Now, the thing is, we need to now inform people that you have this power and how do you use this power. And this is where you have to use, of course, it has to be a multi-pronged approach, because you need to remember also, not every Gambian has access to technology. I mean, a lot of Gambians don't even have access to electricity. And technology is, before you talk about even social media or smartphones, you are struggling to have power to start with. And also, stable internet is a problem. And also, the cost of internet is a problem. So, in this country, we need to be realistic. We need to be very realistic in terms of where we are as a country. So you need to have a multi-pronged approach. So yes, you can use social media tools to get to many young people, especially in the peri-urban area, have access to social media tools. And let's say WhatsApp is probably the most popular, messenger tool in the Gambia. These are things you can use to spread information. But I think also you need to make sure that we are talking about inclusion, to make sure to include more Gambians. You need to now go on the community radios. Go use community radios, give you and other radios give you access to the entire country. So you have to have a multi-pronged approach. You use the new media tools, also the old media tools, because there are people in Gambia who still with the old media, and I think they're the majority. So we also push government to bring broadband access to a wider population at very cheap subsidized cost, so that at least more Gambians can have access to this technology. And two, we also keep on using old media to reach out, do more outreach programs. So you go to the remotest village and tell them, do you know that you can write to your council, because that's the level they're operating. The village is part of a local area council, that to tell you how much rates they are collecting and how they're spending your rates. I think most villages probably or governments don't even know that. The council has certain responsibility to collect your trash because you're paying your rates. They're even supposed to give you street lighting and so on and so forth. So now that information, we should give it to the Gambians across the length and breadth using both new media and old media. That and also we spend time talking, trying to educate and enlighten people that these are rights you have. But if you have rights and you don't exercise them, they are meaningless. So you need to use different communication channels, and of course the media has a role to play, because the media should also ask the right questions. The media should be talking about what is relevant. Of course, we cannot dictate what the media writes. They're independent as such. But I think where we are as a country, we need a media that is also proactive. Things like access to information is something that is very good for media, because it also helps media when you're doing your work. You can get first-hand information rather than having information that's based on speculation. So if you want to break a story, you can get direct private information by asking for it and then break out the story. Even though access to information is not only for the media, but in many countries you will see that most people who requesting for information are media people who want to break a story, because the media, as a fourth estate, have a duty to help inform the population. So I think if we think it through, now that it's a great thing that the law has been assented to by the president, now is how do we implement the law, and in many countries it takes years to actually put the law into effect, because, for example, in the law you need information officers in every government department, so that, and those officers have to be trained to know that when people ask for information, you should give it to them. But we have a culture coming back from the previous era, where government officers are accustomed to hoarding information. That is their mindset. So that culture has to change now, because people have a right to know. So I think it's a very great law, one of the most progressive laws in the current dispensation. I think people should be very bold to use this law. And also they must use it responsibly rather. You cannot just get information for the sake of using it irresponsibly, because I think it should be used constructively for a good purpose. I think that's also very, very important. Fast forward, when December 1st, right? December 1st, we all went out to vote in numbers. People, I remember I was up at 6 a.m., called my friends, Rafi Liap and Willie Abraham, had breakfast and went out to vote. That's how early. We were very eager. And we saw a lot of faces that we knew, and we had the feeling that people this time around are determined to vote against Jammeh, So we went voted smoothly, and then we set up like a little shop in our own situation room with our laptops, and we started collecting results. And of course, it took a while before the results came out, and there was a little bit of an impasse, and everybody was nervous. But as God would have it, at some point Jammeh came and made that famous telephone call. In fact, Jammeh was the first one to say that Gambia has decided in that telephone call to Adama Barrow. And we all came out, and the euphoria in this country is, you cannot imagine. I wish you can go to archives and look at those videos. Gambians, I've never seen Gambians like that, ever. Gambians were like, it was an incredible experience. You cannot describe, unless you were there, you cannot describe it. And then right after that, you started seeing a military build up everywhere. So we were asking, these military guys, are they for us or for Jammeh? Because we didn't know. In every single checkpoint, you found heavy military presence, with even anti-aircraft, you name it, they were there. And then almost 5-6 days later, thereabouts, I think around 8th of December, I can't remember, 8th or 7th of December, or about a week or so, I can't remember exactly, Jammeh basically said, well, the election is fair, and he's cancelling the election. So Well, that's what triggered me, and then I sat here in this house, and I was talking to my wife, and I said, and to another friend, Asta, I said, over the phone, and she was, people were like writing on Facebook, complaining. I'm like, we cannot, we cannot just sit here and just complain on Facebook. And what are we going to do? Are we going to sit here and just Jammeh decide that our vote doesn't count for nothing? I said we cannot allow that. We have to do something, because everybody was together when Jammeh lost the election, and now people are starting to lose interest. I said, look, we need to do something. So I decided to invite people I believe are influencers or influencers in different. I called many people, but out of many I called, maybe I called 20, and maybe about 8 or 9 came. And I said, look, we are Gambians. We are fortunate and blessed that we're sort of fairly well educated, and we are blessed in many ways, and we need to do something for our country. We're just going to sit and watch this happen. Let's use our different capacities and build a movement to make sure that the voice of the Gambians is heard. And we, in this group, you had different people. You had people from the media, you had people who are economists, you had people who are computer scientists, you had people who are businessmen, you had people who are radio presenters, you have people who are, show promoters. A very diverse group, and everyone had something, a skill. You had several of them are actually government employees, including my wife, public servants. And that's how we sat down, and I took my laptop out, and we put a big screen, and we started saying, let's come up with a hashtag, because many years ago we came up with a hashtag called Ebola Free Gambia, and most of those people around the table were also, some of them were part of that group. So what we did with Ebola Free Gambia was very good at the time. So how can we now do that at the national level? That's how we started coming up with the names. In fact, the first name was Jammeh Must Go. We said no, but Jammeh Must Go is limited. And then the name came up. Oh, Gambia Has Decided. We said that was a eureka moment. We said that's the word. We put it up there, and then we said this is it. So we started planning, we assigned roles. We said we need to build this movement. We have to have a multi-pronged approach. We're going to use a hashtag, get Gambians on it, and nobody knows. We just started changing our profile pictures, and everybody's changing it, and it's going around, everybody's going crazy, not knowing where it's coming from. It was coming from right in this house, with a group of great young Gambian minds. In fact, I was the oldest. Everybody was young there, or younger, I would say. So anyway, that's how it started, and we planned, and we have brilliant minds who had different expertise in the media and social media and tech and other things. And then when we started moving, and then when we started getting impetus, we moved to the second stage. When we started talking to people like Babukar, the young people from Activista, Eso, Saidi Khan, a young man, and that's how we started getting the young people behind the movement. And then the young people now took ownership and took it to the next level. So we organized a big event. They had a big event at the University of Gambia, and then they invited us, and we provided everybody a T-shirt. And then that's when we said, this is yours, take it and run with it. So the whole idea was to make it, we initiated, but Gambians carried it forward. That's why when people say, they ask me who's Gambia Has Decided, I said, Gambia Has Decided is everyone. It was a catalytic movement that the young people took. Gambians here and Gambians abroad took it, and at that time there was a gap. There was this deafening silence, and no one knew what was happening. So Gambia Has Decided came and gave Gambians hope, and people just jumped onto it because they were like, what's going to happen? And suddenly Gambia Has Decided. I'm like, there it is. We've decided. And then it was a form of peaceful defiance against Jammeh. Said, we've decided, and you have to respect our voice. And that's when we started doing the billboards, the T-shirts, and so on and so forth. And I think for me it was one of the most beautiful moments in my life, for sure, because a little chat led to Gambians coming together, and everybody took ownership. Everybody saw themselves in it. Nobody owns it. I don't own it. That's why we never sort of try to even copyright the name it belongs to everybody. When we're working doing this, people were making T-shirts, and we'll tell them, look, we'll just send you the real logo, so we have consistency. And they were selling. We don't care. We just want to spread the word. And everybody worked together and did something beautiful. And I think it played a lot of people don't understand what happened in the back rooms, because when we did Gambia Has Decided, the international community, they were not sure where the Gambian people stood, because if you look at the margin between Jammeh and the coalition, it was less than 20,000. But when Gambia Has Decided started, it kind of gave legitimacy to the international community to say, look, This is the Gambian people speaking. Forget about the 20,000 difference. This is the Gambian speaking, and we need to help restore democracy. A lot of conversation happens, which I cannot speak of on record, based on that. That's when they started saying, this is about the people. We need to defend Gambian people's voice, the will of the people, because the people are speaking. So for me, it just shows you, if people come together and put their differences aside and come with a common objective and plan, execute, you can have great results. So for me, it's like, now we're coming to an election. Gambia Has Decided, they've done what was supposed to be done. It did its little bit in the bigger equipment. Because always people say, who did what? I said, it doesn't matter. Gambia was removed through a sequence of events that happened way before Gambia Has Decided. A lot of events happened. People have died, people have sacrificed. And Gambia Has Decided just came and did its part in that process. So this change belongs to all Gambians. And Gambia Has Decided did this little bit. And Gambia Has Decided is Gambia. It's not Salieu Taal or Rafi Diab or anybody as a job. It's Gambia who found themselves through a hashtag and showed Jammeh that we have decided and we don't want you anymore. And I think that is, a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people say, oh, they expected that we wanted something. No, we're not politicians. We didn't do this to get position. We are serving our country. And you as a Gambian, Gambia would not have succeeded because of me and my friends. It's Gambians who made it successful. So if you're going to thank someone, thank yourself, thank Gambia. Because it's Gambians who made it successful, not, okay, we were catalysts. It's just, sometimes I say it's luck, right place, right time. It went off the roof. I sit down and say, whoa, did I expect this? I don't know, but at that point in time, all I knew was we were ready to sacrifice our lives, our resources, to give Gambians a voice. And that's what was actually our motivation at the time. And we were not even thinking of anything else. We said, we have to do this. Come rain, come shine. I remember the first day I told all these young people who were there, including even Mayor Bensouda was there, one of the founding members, and we told them, anybody who doesn't want to risk their life or the resources can leave the room. Because what we're doing is very, very risky business. This is Yahya Jammeh's Gambia still. He has the army, he has the police, he has the NIA. And everybody said, and I'm the oldest guy there. I said, look, I'm the oldest guy, but we will not leave anybody hanging dry. We'll support you, whatever happens, but know that it's a risky business. And they said, we're in it. So for me, it's, at the end of the day, whatever you do in life, if you're committed to it, you're selfless, and you're determined, you can succeed. Nothing is impossible. I'm sure, who would have thought Adam Barrow would be president today? Who would have thought the coalition that was put together hastily would have defeated Jammeh with all his might, resources, and everything else? But if you believe in something, you're committed, you put effort into it, I think a lot can happen. The Gambia Bar Association, the intervention started before my presidency, and I would like to give credit where credit is due. I think one of the biggest steps that the Gambia Bar did was calling Jammeh's action treasonous. I think that's one of the biggest, and was a turning point for Gambia. Because after Jammeh decided to announce that he will cancel the election, we put together a small team. I was not a member executive. I was outgoing, president. But I was, I was part of the team. Fortunately, privileged to be part of the team with, like Aziz Bensouda, Yasin Senghor, and a few other lawyers. And we had a small meeting at Coco Ocean, short meeting, like a strategic meeting. There we decided that we're going to make a statement and set up a drafting committee, and invited whole membership, and told our membership that we cannot stand by and watch Jammeh do this, because what he's doing is unconstitutional. If he doesn't agree with the election, he should go to court. But he must concede and hand over power. And we call his action treasonous. And when we did that, we stood there, there's a picture of us in front of Coco Ocean, and Salieu Taal was appointed interim president. He read that statement. And when that statement was read, every other group or association that's Gambian, from the Bird Watchers Association, from the, you name it, from the Chamber of Commerce to the Bumpsters Association, Bird Watchers Association, Fast Njagos, everybody was emboldened to speak. And I think that was the turning point for Gambia. When the bar spoke in Gambia, everybody felt emboldened and brave enough to speak, because everyone's like, if the lawyers can speak, we have protection. And that also attracted a lot of attention, because the international community were not sure where it's going. When the lawyers said this is unconstitutional, it's treasonous, that gave them legitimacy to start talking. Even when they start having this Security Council discussions, all the things came up. They said, this is what the bar said. So I think the bar has played a really huge role in helping bring about change. And of course, subsequently, I became president, I think 2 years afterwards, and I continued on the trajectory of repositioning the bar as the primary voice for the rule of law and promotion of good governance. So we as a bar have been very much involved in setting up the CRC, in also the TRRC process. We have been very, very instrumental, of course, and all the major pieces of bills that have been proposed to basically improve our governance environment, to make our laws more democratic. We have been directly involved as a bar association, and specifically, I have tried to push and shift the bar as a member of civil society. Before, the bar was always seen as a sort of a standalone association of lawyers. But I think, in my own humble opinion, we live in a post, we are transitioning from a dictatorship to democracy, and I feel and the bar feels that we now should be more aligned with civil society. That's why the bar partakes in most of the civil society coalitions in Gambia. You name it, the coalition on access to information, we were one of the lead players. From conception, design, drafting, we were involved in that. Even the coalition on the CRC draft, we are part of it. We had a concept paper, and also have many groups do their concept paper. We coalition on elections. Now everything is about a coalition. So the way we work now as a bar, we sort of like the de facto legal sort of support for any coalition that is working towards the promotion of democracy and good governance. And I think that has also sort of earned some respect, because before, lawyers were seen as only caring about the welfare of its members, but now we've enlarged that to the welfare of society. So, and we've also been sort of involved in a lot of supporting a lot of public interest litigation. I mean, with for example, the Gambia Participates actions, we are involved, and also with in my capacity as president, three of my members actually, we did the first amicus curiae for the Yankuba Toure case. So really, we are now doing a lot more in the public interest, and we hope to do a lot more. And we have also been lucky enough to collaborate in programs that will help, that will give pro bono legal advice in prisons. We have a prison desk in Johnson Prison where we're helping to give to advocate, give legal advice and legal representation free of charge for young people. And in the process, we've helped release a lot of young people who are being detained without bail, without, sometimes a lot of things are missing, and they get lost in the system. But we are working in collaboration with the UNDP, National Legal Aid Agency, and another group called CLS. But all these things the bar is doing, really, we're trying to increasingly be more and more relevant, not only to our members, but to society at large. And I think these are interesting times for the bar. And of course, I have another year to go, but we hope to build the foundation so that whoever takes on will continue that legacy. I think a lot of Gambians are living in a nightmare. A lot of Gambians don't wake up to a meal, having one decent meal, having electricity, having water, having access to education, having access to basic health. I think this, for me, let the Gambian dream start with not building huge skyscrapers or huge roads or multi-million-dollar airports. The Gambian dream is about every Gambian child should have access to education, healthcare, and a decent living. I think that is the starting point. every single Gambian should have the opportunity to make something out of their lives, regardless of whether you are born in Banjul, Koina, or Fas, or Badibu. For me, I think the Gambian dream is